74,000 years ago, the sky over your ancestors turned black and stayed that way for years. A mountain in Sumatra had torn itself open. The sun vanished, and somewhere in that darkness, your entire species nearly starved out of existence. The Toba supervolcano hurled nearly 3,000 cubic kilometers of ash and gas into the sky. Plants died first, then the animals that ate the plants died, and then the humans who depended on both died with them. This was not a hard year. This was a planet that forgot how to feed anyone. Geneticists have found the scar this catastrophe left inside your own DNA. Across the whole of Africa, the population may have collapsed to only a few thousand breeding pairs. You descend from the handful who did not starve. But hunger had already been deciding who survived, long before Toba. 1.8 million years earlier, a different kind of human had already learned that lesson the hard way. Homo erectus carried a brain 1/3 the size of yours, crude stone tools, and no language you would recognize. And still, they walked out of Africa and never stopped walking. They crossed into the grasslands of the Caucasus, reaching a site called Dmanisi in modern-day Georgia. They pushed into the bamboo forests of China and the volcanic islands of Java in Indonesia. They held on for over 1.5 million years, longer than your own species has existed. Longevity like that is never an accident of luck. It is a strategy for staying fed while the world keeps trying to starve you. You might assume that strategy was purely physical. Fire, sharp stone, speed. That assumption is wrong. At that same site in Dmanisi, archaeologists uncovered a skull lying among the bones of saber-toothed cats. It belonged to an elderly Homo erectus who had lost every tooth years before death. In a landscape already starved of food, this person could not chew meat or tear a root from frozen ground. They should have died within weeks, the same way you would in their place, and yet the bone around their tooth sockets had fully healed. Someone had chewed this person's food for them. Someone had held water to their lips for years, while food itself stayed scarce. Someone kept a person alive who could give nothing back, inside a group already fighting over calories. When food ran out, this group chose to feed the one member who could not feed himself. Homo erectus held the planet on that strategy for over 1 million years. Then, around 300,000 years ago, a smarter, hungrier species rose in Africa. You. A bigger brain and sharper tools should have made your ancestors unstoppable. The evidence says otherwise. A jawbone found in Misliya Cave in Israel belonged to a Homo sapiens who left Africa 180,000 years ago. That population left no trace in your genome today. A skull from Apidima Cave in Greece is dated to 210,000 years ago. It belonged to the oldest known European ever found, and that lineage disappeared too. The starkest failure sits inside a cave in northern Laos called Tam Pà Ling. Bone fragments there prove something stranger still. A full, viable population of your ancestors had crossed half the planet. They were thriving in a tropical jungle 86,000 years ago, and their genetic signal is gone completely. Something kept killing these early waves while a small-brained ape survived for over 1 million years on the same planet. That something was not weakness. It was hunger, arriving at the wrong moment with nowhere left to run. A 2025 study led by Dr. Emily Hallett at Loyola University Chicago uncovered the real reason. The final wave of your ancestors survived what killed every wave before them. For at least 70,000 years before that final migration, they had been practicing for exactly this kind of disaster. They learned to eat from the dense rainforests of Central Africa. They learned to survive on the driest stretches of the Sahara and on the frozen edges of the continent's southern tip. When Toba blotted out the sun, the specialist hunters starved because their one food source vanished. The generalists simply switched to something else. The conquest of the world was never won by the strongest hunter. It was won by whoever could still find a meal after everything they used to eat was gone. That habit is the reason you are watching this right now. After Toba, the handful of survivors who eventually left Africa for good did not sprint across the globe. A genetic study published in Nature Communications in 2024 traced them to a single stopping point. It was a highland region in modern-day Iran called the Persian Plateau. They stayed there for roughly 15,000 years, quietly becoming the reason you exist at all. A population of only a few thousand people slowly became the ancestors of nearly everyone alive outside Africa today. Every person you have ever met whose ancestry traces outside Africa can be traced back to that one population. They were exhausted and half-starved, waiting on a plateau in Iran for the world to become livable again. But that plateau was not empty ground waiting to be claimed. Your ancestors walked into a world that already belonged to other humans. When they finally pushed into Europe and Asia, they met the Neanderthals. They met the Denisovans. And after everything scarcity had already cost them, they did not fight these other humans to extinction. They had children with them instead. In 2010, geneticist Svante Pääbo sequenced the full Neanderthal genome and proved it. Every person alive today outside Africa carries Neanderthal DNA. It is not a trace. It is 1 to 2% of their entire genetic code, still sitting inside you right now. Denisovan genes still help Tibetans breathe at extreme altitude today. Neanderthal genes still shape how your immune system responds to viruses, including the one behind COVID-19. Your morning coffee habit may be a Neanderthal inheritance. So might the shape of your nose. The other humans did not go extinct. They are inside you, reading these words through your own eyes. So when the sky went dark over Sumatra and the food disappeared, one truth held firm. Your ancestors did not survive because they were the fiercest species on the planet. They survived because a long-dead relative once fed a toothless old man who had nothing left to offer. They survived because generalists kept eating while specialists starved around them. And they survived because they finally found other humans standing between them and a livable world. They chose to merge instead of destroy. Every hungry season your ancestors ever survived is still deciding who you are today. If this changed how you see hunger, the next chapter goes darker still. It asks what almost stopped your ancestors from ever leaving Africa in the first place.